My first guest has a little homework assignment up front that I'm going to pass along. He wants you to think of a difficult conversation that either A, you need to have this conversation, but you feel afraid to, or B, an important conversation maybe you did have, but it didn't go well. It was high in conflict. This conversation could be with your spouse, maybe an adult kid, a sibling, or a friend. Even if you need to press pause right now for a minute, we'll wait on you if you need more time to think, but get that conversation in your head. And now consider this a personal live coaching session with the best of the best. Studio 5 relationship contributor, Dr. Matt Townsend. His hope is that you'll walk away today with the tools you need to make a critical conversation happen, or that you'll better understand what went wrong last time so you can move forward with confidence. Yes. I'm excited for this. Exciting. We've never really done anything like this.
No, what have we been doing for 19 years?
What have we been doing? Let's just go live time, real time. So a difficult conversation, we all have one top of mind. Now what?
So one of the problems that I found that is the problem, if we have one problem for a conversation, it's emotion. If a conversation is difficult, it's inherently got an emotional issue around it.
But we are emotional beings.
Are we?
Yes.
We're emotional train wrecks. And so a lot of us just react to emotion instead of understanding it and then preparing ourselves for the emotion.
Okay.
And then when you get emotional, I get emotional, and then we get offended and off we go, and the conversation turns sideways. So we all do this. And what I wanted to do today was give you some tools to manage the emotion as you go through the conversation and start to figure out what's really happening that's tripping you up, what's really making you mad. I, for example, had an adult child who's like 22, 21. And he's helping us around the house.
Yes.
And he's trying to raise me as an adult. And he starts rearranging the cupboards and starts rearranging everything in our house because he's getting married and he's gonna move in the basement. Anyway, long story.
I could tell there's more there, but I won't ask.
But it started and I started to get mad, and I started to react. And then we started arguing about something, like I think it was something in the cupboard.
Sure.
It had nothing to do with anything in the cupboard.
That darn salt shaker.
That darn salt shaker. So I had to go figure out with me what's going on with me that's driving him rearranging my life and making me this mad about something that simple.
Because you've taught us it's never about what we think it's about.
It's never about what we think it's about. So we've got to learn to do that. And one of the best ways to begin, I don't know if you know who Matt Stussy is. I think he's kind of an influencer online. But one of the things that he taught is a really cool rule, and it's the first rule we're going to all focus on.
Okay.
We need to accept the role of raising yourself. Basically, what he says is when you were born, every one of us picked up a body, a human, that we now need to raise.
It's our job.
It's our job. We've kind of relegated it to our parents' job. They were supposed to raise us. And then our spouse is supposed to raise us.
Yeah, we do put a lot of pressure on that partner. Like, you're supposed to help me. You're my better half.
And then weirdly, my kids now are trying to raise me.
Yeah.
And so one of the rules is I want you to start owning your own life and start raising your own self. Raise your own reactions, make them better, raise your own vision, your own. If you're gonna keep being the child, then you're going to always feel with no power, no voice, no say.
That's good.
And it's gonna make us react. So the first rule for all of us, as you think about the people you're struggling with, where do you need to grow up with that person? Where is it an unstable, unhealthy relationship?
So back to the emotions, are our emotions part of that growing up? Like we need to learn how we're processing and bringing those to conversation?
Exactly right. Because if I learned when I was young to avoid difficult talks and hide, then I could be 50 and avoid difficult conversations and hide. So we all learned emotion somewhere, right? And so we need to learn to understand that we probably need to raise that emotion to the adult level now. And we don't have to blame anyone to do that. We just have to grow up and start noticing we're in charge of our lives.
I'm so glad to hear you say that. I think a lot of times people going through hard things, which is all of us at one point or the other, it's so easy to look back and say, but they... and he, and my mom. And it's like at some point, yes, work through that, but at some point, it's like your fresh start. It's your growing up.
That's right. And so now what? That's kind of the next rule. So now what? And so as we get into this, the second rule is recognize how you've learned to feel and process emotions. And so and the best way I've ever found to do that is take your present feeling and then think back to the earliest time you felt that.
Like your present negative feeling?
So when my child is rearranging my cupboard and I'm not liking the way he's doing it because I didn't want my stuff there, I wanted it here.
Yeah.
What was and I start to feel frustrated.
So you go back
anxious,
as far as you can.
And then I just write down the emotions I'm feeling in that moment. And then I go back and ask, what's the earliest time in my life I felt that way?
I really like this question.
So I'm feeling disempowered. I'm feeling like I don't have a say. I'm feeling like everyone's ignoring me. And then I can go back. What's the earliest time? Well, I was an 8-year-old kid, the baby of the family, the only boy in the family, and I didn't have a say. 4 women ahead of me had a say. And so if I didn't want to do something, it kind of didn't matter. We were doing it. And that emotion I learned young, so I learned young to fight it. But I didn't have a voice, so how could I fight it?
It sort of gives you, and that's a great example, this like compassionate lens towards yourself.
That's right.
And does that soften our edges or diffuse our negative emotion?
Don't beat yourself up now. Don't think you're such a loser because you're feeling the emotion. Don't judge the emotion. It's just an emotion, but it has a history. Go back to where you learned the history, and you'll start to see why, and it'll actually enlighten why this thing that's going on in the fight is bothering you.
You say then we can explore stories that we're using to kind of color around this conflict.
Yeah, we have to tell a story about what we're feeling. But the story I'm telling is that I didn't want my cups there. I wanted my cups here. I didn't want that. And you're not even listening to me. So that becomes my story. Part of the story might be a story we're always telling. Like, are you always saying you're the victim? Are you always saying you have no power? Are you always thinking everyone else is a narcissist? You know, if you're calling everyone else a narcissist, there's a problem, right? It's not everyone in the world could be that. So what's the story you tell to explain my anger about this? Or do I tell the story, I'm a loser, I'm not going to heaven, this is no good, I may as well die? What's the story you tell? And then as you start to understand the story, you'll find out that that's actually probably a part of where you learned the emotion. Because if you feel small in the emotion, then the story is going to be a small story.
If you feel small in the emotion, the story is small. Matt, that's amazing.
It's always going to be that way. And if you feel cocky and big in the emotion, then you're going to make everyone else feel small.
That is so good. Okay, this next step, you're going to use a word that I've come to hate, but because I love you so much, you're probably going to make me feel like I can do this. Attend to hidden triggers. I don't like the word triggers.
I know. I actually don't either. I like the fact that it's the thing that fires the bolt.
That poked you.
It's the thing that creates the explosion. And so generally behind the story, if you listen to your story long enough, you're going to go down and you're going to hear the hidden cause, the hidden vulnerability. And usually I call that a starved issue, something that's starved you. And generally those are lovable. You don't feel loved, you don't feel capable, you don't feel like you belong, and you don't feel safe. So if you don't feel loved, you feel irrelevant. You don't feel seen. You feel invisible. You don't feel important. If you don't feel capable, it's either smart or dumb. So if somebody says something to you and it makes you feel dumb, then we're playing with the trigger of being capable. If you don't belong, it might be whether you're liked or disliked. So it might be my son not liking my opinion about this thing. And I now start to feel like do I not belong here? Do I not have a place to put my cup?
In my own house.
In my own house?
Yes.
Then off we go.
You gave us a word swap there, trigger for vulnerability. Kind of the same thing, what you're feeling, what's setting you off. And finally, 1 minute left. You want us to lift your life with our healthiest, and here's a catch that I think applies to kind of a male-female psyche, informed response. Like, let's be informed about how we are showing up.
And part of that is that if I'm doing all of this just out of ignorance, I guess I mean no ill will, but the problem is I still suffered through that fight. So the more informed I get about how I process emotion and think about it, the better off I am. So then the only thing you have to do to lift it is do the grown-up thing. Whatever my adult parent would have me do in this moment, and it might just be stop and say, you know what, I think I'm getting triggered or vulnerable about the fact that I don't have a say. And I felt that when I was a little kid, and my sisters were always telling me what I had to do. And so instead of fighting with you right now, I love you guys, let me just go take a break.
Everyone's softer. Everyone's calmer. Everyone feels more peaceful around what otherwise would have been this explosive situation. And
then offended. And then what's also powerful is I now am dealing with the real issue, and I can change. I'm not expecting everyone else in the world to run a game with me that never offends me.
overall, the goal here is to conquer today by better understanding what happened yesterday, just to be better, one bit at a time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome.
I'm
Good
having
stuff.
that conversation I
See?
started with in a totally different way in my head. That was fantastic.
Cool.
These are the principles you teach in your Becoming One program.
Everybody got to go check it out. It's matttownsend.com. The goal is to help you become one with yourself, one with your God, one in your marriage, one with your family, and one with your coworkers.
And in that is peace and
power.
confidence and power.
That's exactly right.
You're so good. matttownsend.com, everybody. Go there to check it out. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Brooke.